Welcome to the Microsoft Security Insights Podcast with your hosts, Franklin Grimberg and Edward Walton, where we discuss Microsoft 365 security and Azure security news and products. Recorded December 19th, 2020, which is a Saturday at 10:15 a.m. Good morning, Franklin.
Good morning, Edward.
So that you know, and our listeners know, we're recording on Saturday because Edward was so busy. And because I had to push it off a little bit, I had to get Franklin 2 hours back in his life. So I went to bed an hour later and slept in an hour later. Does that count?
There you go. Yeah, you owe me 2 hours of sleep, that's for sure. And before we forget, I think this is going to be our last podcast for the next few weeks over the holidays. So we'll be back in the beginning of January.
We're going to come up with some new things. We're going to try some new things you and I talked about. So over the holidays, while we're going to try during this not to work, we will be working on this to see if we can run through some dry runs and make sure that what we try to do to bring, more content to our listeners, a little bit better dynamic, and a few other things, right? We just want our listeners to stay engaged, and you came up with some really good ideas. So hopefully over the holidays, you and I connect and practice. But I want to do one thing before we get into what was interesting in your work week, and then we get into the podcast. I'm going to say this. The opinions given by myself do not reflect that of my employers or customers, because I'll be very opinionated on one of our topics here. So I want everybody to know that what I'm about to say is strictly Edward's perspective based on, me reading, hanging out with some industry experts, which are my peers, and you'll see where it's coming from when we get to that particular topic. So now with that being said, that's what we got here.
I wonder which topic it could be, but that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I just had the crazy week, still working hard, still writing, and looking forward to the time off and having fun and doing the changes for the podcast. And also there are so many hacking events going on right now at through SANS Holiday Hack Challenge, Hack the Box. I mean, not Hack the Box, Try Hack Me. I have not been hacking in over a month, and it's driving me crazy. So I want to get through this, and I'm going to spend an entire week just having fun with those challenges. So that's what I plan to do.
Me, a lot of admin. I'm going to take care of expenses, updates, documentation, and then I am going to go through that massive list of lab things that I was going to do and reduce it by 75%. And then the remaining 25%, I'm going to go ahead and get it, configured in my lab. Like some of the things we've said that we were going to do.
That we were going to do.
Well, yeah, there's some things you said you were going to get done. You didn't do either. So I'm going to get it configured in the lab, right? And I think everybody that listens to us know that I moved into a new home, and inside my new home, I purposely built a data center to put all these things in. So now that I can start to unbox this stuff, I'm going to start introducing things into the lab you and I can use. Firewalling technologies. I have some NFR for some other security vendors and products. So I want my lab to be really robust, but at the same time be affordable, right? And so I've been calling in some favors to get some of these NFRs, like from Proofpoint and Infoblox and Carbon Black and some of these other things, right? So I really want the lab, to be as close to real world and with our customers. So when you and I are testing out stuff and doing things, and then a lot of this legacy equipment that I had that I was going to get rid of, I now have a really good place for it, right? So it's no big deal for me to run in my data center. You and I still use a lot of the cloud stuff. I got stuff in GCP, AWS, and Azure, but I still have like 2 servers downstairs left. I haven't rid of everything else, but I still have 2 servers downstairs, and one of them has like 120 gig of RAM in it, 32 cores, with 13 terabytes of local storage, and then I got that SAN array that has another 20 terabytes. So I got it all wired up now. I just haven't powered it up. So I think that's going to be one of my things. I'm going to power it up. I'm going to update all the controller firmwares on it. I think it's running VMware ESX. Yeah, it's running VMware 7.1. And so now when I want to run localized machines, I don't have to worry about running so many, physical boxes. I can just spin up a VM now. I have persistent VMs, right? And not have to worry about using up my cloud count, right? Because when you run the stuff as a cloud, there's a count for it. There's a cost. So it'll be interesting once I get it up. I get you access to it, and that way, I got a really, really good internet connection now. So I got fiber, and they terminated the fiber into my house. And then since I have a Cisco 2960 with fiber uplinks, the AT&T guy had me terminated directly into that. And when I tell you this is so fast, it's way faster than I was using with Comcast and slash Xfinity. And I don't know what program I was on, but because my community is new, they ended up giving me a static IP address. So I don't have to worry about that either, that changing. So, and then
Now,
I'm gonna get all the,
did you ever fix the fact that everything was running slow to all your machines because you were using 3Com Ethernet cards from the 90s?
I thought it was a 3Com hub that I was using, right? The crazy part about it, I still kept that. I kept that hub. I was packing up and I saw a blue and white box, and I said, "What is this thing?" And I got it, and still works. And I got a 3Com switch.
So I have to say I've given up on my own servers that I have. I have two of them. I was doing a like a machine learning challenge to bypass it was a vision thing, and you have to do it to bypass like clicking through, choose the buses or whatever, right? And so I ran it on my Surface, and I could not do it fast enough. So I spun up one of my servers, one of my big servers. I ran it. It still couldn't do it fast enough. So I actually went out to Azure, spun up something with a little bit more horsepower, and actually was able to complete the task by spinning up an Azure VM. So I'm like, okay, if my servers are just way too old now, so
Yeah.
I've had them turned off for quite a while.
Yeah, I'm not buying any new hardware. I have enough laptops, man. I got consulting laptops that are powered off now. I'm gonna power them up over the holidays and update everything. But I got a laptop. Every laptop I have has like 32 gig of RAM in it, right? But I don't carry them too much anymore. Reason one, you and I are not traveling to consult, right? And reason two, they're 17-inch laptops. They big.
Oh, yeah.
But I need them for my eyes so I can see, man. These little bitty 14.1s and 15.6s, yeah, they're cool to knock something out really quick. But when I know I got to sit down and really get at it, when I'm looking at VS Code, I need a big screen, right? I need to be able to see this stuff. So, but Office in my new home is about 85% done.
I have to say, the other day I looked, I'm like, well, I have a collection of backpacks for the different scenario that I'm going to be in, right? Smaller backpack, for my Surface, it's more professional looking. So if I'm just taking a day trip into DC, that's the backpack I use. If I'm, traveling to a customer, I have a different one that's larger, so I can actually take it on the plane and put more stuff in it. So I have about, I don't know, 10 different backpacks for the different types of scenarios that I'm in. And I've not used a backpack in the past 10 months or whatever. It's crazy.
I'm a backpack collector, right? So whenever I'm visiting different countries, I'll grab one, right? And
Oh,
especially
okay.
when I see kids in a different country, they always have the coolest one. Well, not one with a cat on it or something, but I got one in South Africa, which was our last international trip, early in the year, maybe. If it wasn't early in the year, it was late 2019. And I had a custom backpack made. When I tell you I got so many compliments, it is absolutely my favorite. And my second favorite is one I got in Tokyo. And my third favorite, um, is one I got from Microsoft. And then my fourth is the one I got from Tokyo. And then I got one made in, I might have been in London year before last. So I bought a like, it's not a backpack holder, but I don't know what you call it. I got it from Home Depot. You just screw it onto the wall and you can hang your jackets and stuff on. So I'm hanging on my backpacks in one of my rooms now. So I'm a big backpack guy. That's one of my
All right, well,
vices.
I want a picture of the backpack. So of your
I'll take them
favorite
all and
backpack.
send to you. Yeah, I'll take them all to you. Well, let's get into the podcast. I see that
Great.
this week you did all the hard work and grabbed our topics. And I'll, if you don't mind, I'll kick off the first one because I had some experience talking to a customer about this thing, and maybe this solves their annoyance
That
that
sounds
there,
great.
yeah, that there wasn't any really advanced honey queries or pre-built workbooks or such for Azure Activity audit logs, and they were having to just see the alerts and go do a lot of the manual, inspections and not investigation because nothing really bad happened. They were just
So
getting flooded.
is
Yeah,
that Azure Activity? So this article is the Azure Active Directory audit logs now available in Advanced Hunting
yeah.
public preview. So this is the Advanced Hunting in Microsoft 365 Defender, which is just basically running queries with KQL. I wouldn't call it Advanced Hunting. So yeah, were you more interested in the audit and Active Directory or the overall Azure audit logs?
The audit logs, the customer wanted to see who, what, when, and why things were going on. When I see stuff like this, first thing I ask is this, insider threat type of investigation. They were like, there's no really easy way to go in and look at these when we're getting all these alerts. And they're having to go into the individual product and figure out what they should be sort of searching on, hunting for, and things like that. So I think this may get them close to what they're trying to achieve. And they're not a lay down customer, right? This customer doesn't come to me unless they've run into a dead end. So I always take their request with legitimacy, right? So I'm gonna look at this.
So
Now,
couldn't you, let me ask you, couldn't you always, if you actually connected the data connector for Azure Active Directory, couldn't you get these logs anyways with inside Sentinel, and they're just exposing them now with inside M365 Defender?
yeah, so that's part of it too. I think customers are now realizing Sentinel is here to stay. It's serious. It is a contender, but customers still don't want to be sort of feel as though they're forced to go to that product until they feel like it. And you know, they are trying to figure out when is a good time to pivot away from Sentinel and go directly to the alerting product rather than be inside Sentinel. And I know where that's coming from. Customers have not yet put enough non-Microsoft type data sources so that it becomes more efficient to stay in Sentinel rather than to run to each individual telemetry source to try to figure out what happened, right? So they're getting there, right? But
wouldn't they just stay with inside the Defender security portal to just do the searching anyways? And this is more what this is enabling for them so they don't have to go to Sentinel.
yeah, that's it too. And that's a big thing, right? Because now I'm seeing a lot of separation of who owns what within the organization, right? The security team doesn't necessarily own any of the cloud identity or the cloud audit stuff, right? So this is hierarchy and the way things are broken down into teams at customers, right? Because I've been fielding a lot of calls on how the security team has been saying a lot of this junk that's coming into log analytics has nothing to do with us and we're not paying for it. So now they get into a spitting match with the operations team who wants to know capacity, operational up, down, and things along that line, right? Excuse me, my phone is reminding me to do something or another. But yeah, I need to read this article. I'm gonna be very upfront. I didn't read it, but the new data set is in the cloud app events table, and what application equals Office 365. I don't understand that. Why is there looks like there's a requirement to identify the application as Office 365? If it's Azure AD logs, why 365? It's just Azure AD. I know the chance of someone running Azure without 365 is slim to none, but it still happened. I happen to know one customer that is using Azure, but is not using Office 365. They still have Exchange on premise. So I'll check it out. I'm gonna look at it too. That's gonna be one of the things I read up on. I don't know if I'm gonna, well, see, these are the easy low lifties in that lab, right? Just go turn this on, right, and you're good to go.
So I got a question.
I agree with. Go ahead.
Is it best practice to, so let's say they have Azure, somebody's got Azure Monitor set up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to create a new Sentinel setup, right? A new
Mhm.
Sentinel workspace.
Mm-hmm.
Best practice to apply the Sentinel solution to an already set up Azure Monitor Log Analytics workspace, or is it best practice to just go ahead and create a new Log Analytics workspace and then apply Azure Sentinel there?
I have a very good answer. I had to address that question to a customer on Monday. Here's the answer. First of all, I don't believe in such thing as best practices. We already know that, right?
I was setting you up for that.
Yeah. Behind licensing, that's the other thing that just gets my spidey sense and my hackles up, right? Number two, if you read the Microsoft Docs, they highly recommend that you create a net new log analytics workspace with Sentinel. And I'll tell you why. It is not so much the technology, it is the business and financials. The customer asks, Edward, if I already have a log analytics workspace and I've been using it for Azure Monitor, if I apply the Sentinel solution to it, will I be charged? Yes. What happens is that for 30 days, you won't be charged for anything that's coming inside of it, right? So it's sort of confusing a little bit, but anything that's coming in for 30 days for Sentinel, you won't be charged, right? Remember, Sentinel's a separate charge from Log Analytics. Sentinel is the product and the solution, and Log Analytics is where you put the data. What happens is, if that data is in there after 30 days, Sentinel will go back and rationalize all the data. So the MSRP for Sentinel is $2 per gigabyte.
So it goes back and rationalizes all the data that's already in for Azure Monitor.
Yep.
Nothing to do with the tables that are related to Azure Sentinel.
Yes. It's going to charge you $2 per gigabyte. That's MSRP. And the problem with that, customers see Sentinel ingestion and they go, we didn't ingest anything. It was already there. Well, that's a bad terminology. What they're really trying to say is rationalization and you can't say formatting, you can't say indexing because those are very distinct terms. But what he's really doing is putting the data in such a way that Sentinel can now use it as part of his solution. But if you read the docs, it says Sentinel ingestion, you're not double ingesting. I don't know why they haven't changed the documentation to say you ingest into log analytics and Sentinel rationalizes slash indexes or slash, can't say parse either because parse is a very direct task that has something else to do with logging. But all Sentinel is doing is making the data useful for it. So you're not double ingesting it. So you will be charged if that data is in there. Now, to some people, that is acceptable because some security people say that you need operational data to give the complete picture of what's going on in your environment. And I believe that, right? If you're using Azure Polity or Azure Blueprints to maintain some type of control over your environment and you start seeing things that are bleeding outside your control, you need that operational and change control type of intelligence to say, who is spinning up this stuff? Is this a coin miner? Is this a rogue employee doing this stuff? And most of the time, the attention is going to be caught when you get that big bill. So the short answer is Microsoft highly recommends that you create a net new log analytics workspace because the old workspace can still be consulted. It can do cross workspace queries to be able to see if you wanted to go back and include that old data into any of your new queries. So the only thing that you got to be careful of is data governance, right? Wherever you create it, make sure it's in line to your data governance and your data sovereignty requirements, right? That'll get some customers in trouble too. They want to use a log analytics workspace, but because of their business model, they can't use it because it resides in Germany or resides here, and they can't use it. So they had to create one closer to where they're doing their operations. And then you have to do some type of cross workspace query, and then you're good.
All right, so let's go on to the next one, which is Microsoft Defender for Office 365 investigation improvements coming soon.
So this is something you and I, they keep saying this, right? And when I go to the portal, my portal's not updated. You
Oh,
keep
yeah,
having
so
the,
it's got the new unified.
yeah. And I reached out to the PG over at Microsoft and say, hey, how soon? Well, it's coming. Well, quit having podcasts and webinars that's showing the goodness, and I can't get it. You keep talking about these improvements. When I log in, I don't see it. So it's not an improvement. Right. And so this is just ongoing. All right. Manually triggered investigations. Okay. I do that anyway. Right. Um, and
Do you
I
remember
have nothing to say about this.
the
And
evidence showing a mailbox configuration? I guess it
n-
has.
now let me show. I did check my lab, and that last screenshot you had showed up. Right. So
Right, because the jump off stuff will it should actually show up.
yeah, but until I get the whole portal that I pay for, quit writing blog posts about this. Right. And that's just me. You know, the Defender for Office Investigation improve. Well, here they go. See, they covered their butt. Improvements coming soon to a theater near you. So I haven't looked into this because I gave up. I kept trying to check in every day, look at my thing, switching buttons back and forth, flushing my cache to make sure I didn't have something that was making me default to the old portal. Until I get a new portal, I don't want to read it. That's that's all I got to say on that.
I
You can
guess
tell I'm aggravated.
we'll move on to the next one then. All right, investigate Azure Security Center alerts using Azure Sentinel. Why couldn't we do this before?
You know, I don't know why they make
Oh,
this seem as though I don't know.
I know. I think I know what they're doing here. There's Security Center. Fine. There's the alerts. Take action. Pretty standard. What I think that they're pointing out now is that when you pull up the alert, they now have a new. I don't remember this link being here where it will jump you out to Azure Security Center. Was that there before?
No, it wasn't.
Or on the incident page or the
Nope.
alert? Yeah, on the incident page coming is created from the Azure Security Center data connector. Now actually gives you a link at the top to jump out to the Azure Security Center page to then look at the incident over there. I guess that's what this is about.
Well, let me tell you what's cool about that. You're going to start seeing that type of pivot for all the products. When you get an alert MCAS, you're going to probably see it for MCAS. You're going to see it for Defender. You're going to see it for all of that. You're probably going to see it for Azure Security Center for IoT. So the ability to have a one-click pivot
There
to
is
take you
no
to the
such
portal.
thing as Azure Security Center for IoT, is there?
Azure Defender for IoT.
There you go.
Azure Defender for IoT. It has changed. Something happened with it where they have reverted back to an old deployment model. And I don't know why they did that. All right. Like now you have to go back and start trying to run nested uh, Hyper-V servers or running Hyper-V in Azure. So I'm going to go back and investigate again because they have really streamlined it. Now it seems like they have taken a step back on how you deploy Azure Defender for IoT. But investigate Azure Security Center alerts using Azure Sentinel is nothing more than they put a button. And you can go back now, which is cool. I like that. You know, I can look at it from here. I can maybe start my preliminary investigation inside behavior analytics and then pivot from there to the incident and then the incident and go there. So it's minor, but it makes you more efficient. So I'm good with that. That's really good. I got to get better at Azure Security Center or Azure Defender for whatever. Azure Security Center. There you go.
So, I mean, I think that one of the good things about this is that inside Azure Security Center, it provides the remediation and how to take action, how to make sure it doesn't happen again. And this information is not being surfaced over in Azure Sentinel. So it's good to jump over there and be able to take the actions that have already been baked into Azure Security Center and follow through. You're just not getting that information over in and Azure Sentinel. It's kind of back to that, purpose-driven UI, where this is not as much depth as say Defender for Endpoints. It still does provide the additional information needed to remediate what's going on. So that's good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, the next one, announcing EDR in block mode generally available.
For some reason, I always thought this was always available in block mode, right? General availability. It's just been in my lab so long, and it's been, I think I've had it enabled. Yeah.
So I think that there's EDR in block mode is really used when you're using somebody else's antivirus, but then you still want EDR capability on top of that to block what's going on. So it gives you the EDR blocking and protection on top of a different vendor's AV. There's always been blocking capability within inside Defender, but this is more specific to if you're using somebody else's AV.
And it's so funny you said that. I was on the last call yesterday, and the customer brought this up, and that was the exact scenario. They're using someone else's endpoint protection, but they wanted to be able to have this, right? And there's an API call that you can do. They will allow Defender, Azure Defender for endpoints to enable block mode task or whatever to another security product. So yeah, I can see the use for it because the customer identified that that's the use case that they wanted to do.
Excellent.
No, before we get to it, let me bring up something else. So I interesting case. I had to lab out and proof out something. So have you enabled Microsoft Defender for Endpoint for Linux?
I've not done that yet.
So it's very interesting when you do it on Red Hat. If you do it on Red Hat, it will not work as advertised in the docs because it's running a Python script. And when you run in a Python script on Red Hat, it won't let you arbitrarily run that from any directory that you want, right? And in itself, that makes sense. So in Ubuntu, this behavior doesn't do it. I can run that onboarding Python command from any directory. I ran it from temp, from user, from bit, wherever I want to run it, right? Because you have to unzip the package. But in Red Hat, it did not let me do that. So what you have to do is run a command called alternatives. And I don't know the complete command line, but you basically are allowing a Python script to run from almost any directory inside a Red Hat, a Red Hat deployment. And I was working with someone, and she's super good at this. And she called me. She said, "Hey, I need some help. You're sort of a Linux guy." And I jumped on it, and I looked at it, and it was failing. So I did a little research, and I tested it on mine. Like, well, it's running. So I looked up, and it says, "Oh, you have to run this command like you're installing Python, and you had to put alternatives in it, and then it allows you to run that onboarding script from whatever directory you want." So for those who are onboarding Red Hat, inside Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, be aware of that. That's a nuance.
Did you really just say somebody called you because they thought you're the Linux guy? Is that what you just said?
I used to be a Linux guy, man.
Didn't we, get around previous podcasts were talking about how far behind you are in Linux these days? I mean,
didn't I just say I used to be? But you don't know what I'm doing after hours. I went and got me a Linux for Dummies book, and I'm getting my skills back up. I used to be a route switch guy, man. You got to realize I got all the way up to CCIE to the written. I didn't take the lab, and then I was a Juniper, JNIS, and all that. It's that lose it or use it. I can still get around on a CCNA level, but my route switching skills are, bah. But no, the Linux stuff, it's just, if you don't do it every day, you know how it is.
I know how it is.
Yeah.
All right. So do you have any opinions about the Cyberpunk situation with Xbox offering refunds?
No.
No. So you're probably talking about this one here that you're going to have the opinions on, which is SolarWinds post-compromise hunting with Azure Sentinel.
I said on 4 calls from the Sentinel team over at Microsoft and a couple others, where they went into very specifics that they're writing workbooks, they're writing Jupyter notebooks, they're writing hunting queries in advance. They're not going to wait for the customer to figure it out. Microsoft is 110% in front of this, right? And kudos to them. Kudos for them saying we are so ingrained into a lot of the operational stuff from our customers, whether we're the single security player or not, we got to get this fixed. We got to help out. And they are jumping in it. And so if you're finding that you will need to get a hunting query, you need indicators, you need IOC, whatever, even if you're not using all the Microsoft stuff, it is worth the read to understand how Microsoft is approaching it to help their customers. This blog post is just one of many, and it is outstanding. And I actually went through it and seen what they're trying to do, and it's getting better every day. So kudos to Microsoft and the security team and the researchers over there for getting in front of this. Now, my opinion right now is my opinion only. I've been listening to all the stuff about this, right? So nobody's given a definitive timeline yet, right? Let me hit on three things. Number one, we should count ourselves lucky that the adversaries decided to go after FireEye. Had they not, they would not have been detected now. So FireEye becomes a victim of this, but end up sort of becomes a savior because, you know, they say it's Russia, Cozy Bear, APT29, whomever it may be. They picked the wrong person. They picked them because, you know, FireEye uses this and they're a high value target, and they had some stuff that they wanted. They had those penetration and those red team tools, and they got them. But had they not gone out the FireEye, right, we would not know to this day. We would not know. So that's so number three, we got lucky, right? And also in that number three, kudos to FireEye for being super transparent about what happened, because they took it on as though something had happened to them. Like, oh my God, we got compromised and we just put our customers and a lot of people in a bad place, and they got in front of it. And then as they did their research, they go, wait a minute, we are the victims here. This is how they got our tools. All right. Number two, poo-poo on SolarWinds, which are really structured responses and all this. And I don't understand how this happened, right? Your tools are being used in FedRAMP high agencies. You're being vetted. So what about your internal operations that allowed this to happen? And I know nothing is hack proof, but shouldn't you be using some of the top tier tools and top tier people to protect your stuff, right? And this attacked your development and your downstream supply to your customers, right? You can't throw rocks, because sooner or later they'll get into my little home lab or get into one of my. If anyone has motivation and have time and have money, you cannot stop them. You got an air gap or just turn the stuff off. So, but the lack of really, and maybe they can't say anything. Is SolarWinds publicly traded?
Yes. And their
Okay, so
stock's been
they're
hammered.
going to have to say something soon, right? But for them to have something that happened, you know, everybody's saying this has happened between March and May, that they had their systems compromised. All right, and you didn't detect it. Are you not using some type of detection tools? You're not using FireEye. You're not using Carblock. You're not using, you know, secure DevOps or secure development lifecycle, you know, procedures. Maybe they were. So let's assume that they were. Right. So number two is going to be predicated that they are doing all the right things, and it's just being too harsh on SolarWinds. So let me give you my number one. Inside job. There you go. Inside job over SolarWinds.
I was
If
waiting for the real opinion scary thing. So you're saying inside job.
Inside job. Nobody's told me this. This is just me. If it comes out that SolarWinds is using all of these tools, best of breed, like you say, best use cases, best people, all these things, inside job. maybe that's not why they're not saying anything. That's just my
Or,
opinion.
I mean, you got the other thing in the fact that, I mean, I'm not trying to make excuses, but you know, you also, when you take a look at the March timeframe, that's a lot of everybody moving to remote. So I'm concerned that that was actually the thing that created the opportunity for the attackers, is the transition over to remote work.
Inexcusable. When you go back and look at the tool sets that they have,
Oh, I'm agreeing that this should never have happened, obviously, but I'm just wondering if they ever publish how it took place. I'm just wondering if it was part of the transition over to dealing with the remote work.
I I,
I
I
think that's
could
been a challenge for a lot of companies. I mean, let's be honest.
I can put it together for you, and this is totally hypothesized and no actual factual behind it. Scramble, can't come into the office, got to work from home. Developers are using their own machine. They're bypassing the check-in, check-out process, and they don't have a secure development life cycle process for strictly 100% remote work. Someone didn't have multi-factor on it, got fish, got access. It's still an inside job because if you're not putting these controls in place for you people that are writing your code, that means that somebody's in charge of your infrastructure, and it ain't the IT people, it ain't the cybersecurity. You're telling me your coders get to do what they want, right? Everybody's scrambling, but
Well, I
I
mean, at that
want
point,
to.
you need to stop and put everything in place before you say, okay, we need to push out this product at this time or whatever. You have to basically stop and put security first, right? Um, I don't know what happened, so I'm just saying that anything that when people say March through May, you know, I know that there was just a huge scramble of organizations transitioning to the work from home scenario, and we'll just have to see not only SolarWinds but other organizations that might have been impacted by that uh, situation, by that
I
transition
think it's
time.
inside. I think SolarWinds does employ. I know nothing about the company. I don't know anybody who works over there, or whatever. But if you just look at it and just highly opinionated, you know, perspective, I'm going to assume that they do well, right? I'm assuming that they are putting in what you like to say best of breed security tools, and that they do have secure development processes. If you do, you're not some school that doesn't have any money. You're not some government, state and local government that's understaffed and underfunded. You are a person that has convinced government agencies, DHS, CISA, Treasury, to use your product. They vet you. They vet you. You don't get to say, "Oh yeah, we good." So I am I just want to see the postmortem, and it's gonna have to come out, right? And we'll see how close I am. People gonna go, Ed, you're crazy. That's not an insider job. Nobody would do that. You'd be surprised.
No, it definitely could be, but I'd say anything March through May. I just know how many people were scrambling to try to deal with the work from home situation. So we'll see if it was, you know, an insider that was malicious or an insider that was, you know,
Negligent.
adjusting to the work from home situation.
Well, if that's the case, you can't hold them, right? Because the behavior of the employees is set by leadership. So I want to eat crow. I don't want to. One of my favorite companies. I used to use their tools all the time. Still do, right? Not the network monitoring piece, but the engineering piece and consulting piece. One of my favorite companies. You know how it was? It was a badge of honor. They had a paid, copy of the engineering tool license, right? You know, I used all their products for a while, but you know, the work from home thing, that is a viable and a very legitimate excuse or fact for certain industries.
I wouldn't call it an excuse. I would say that you know, I mean, they need to not let the person do the work and put the security controls in place first. But I think that a lot of people took the risk because they still needed to move forward. And I think that other companies will find out later on that they had actors in there. I believe that this is specific to Sentinel because Defender for Endpoints is already checking for this.
It is. So now that I'm off my hackles about that, how that happened, right? Because I think what's making me sort of a little, you probably say, it sounds like you got a dog in the fight here. I think what's sort of making me and I don't know why I have this certain, emotional response to this. I think what it is had FireEye not caught this, right? Oh, it would be much worse. And the fact that you call something bad to happen to a very good security company. They got compromised. They got cleanup they got to do now. All their tools that they were using for Red Team, they're making them publicly accessible on their GitHub. They're not proprietary anymore. All the tools that were exfoliated the skin, right? All the tools, all the tools that were taken from FireEye as part of their Red Team stuff, they making it publicly accessible now. You can just go get them.
Anytime I write anything for Xfilts, I'll do exfoliate. So
yeah, you got to exfoliate the tools, right? You got to have a nice clean. Yeah, but you know what? I get it. It can happen to anybody. I'm just mad that FireEye is one of my companies that I have an affinity for. I like how they do their business. I knew some folks who worked over there. I've always had a liking for SolarWinds, but to see that this happened and would not have been caught had it not been for a security company. I've always thought SolarWinds as a security company more than a network management stuff, right?
I mean, the damage is done. So I mean, I'm
But
glad that.
let me expand one more. I promise I'll be done with it because that's water on the bridge, water off a duck's back. The boat has sailed, the sun has set, kick rocks. Let me tell you the other thing. What is one of the industries that uses a lot of this particular product that we have not heard fallback of blowback from just yet? MSPs. Part of these 18,000 people that have been confirmed who have been using this, we have not heard about how these MSPs, and then with MSPs, who you have? Customers. For our listeners who don't really understand, right? I'll boil it down here really quick. They got in and they were able to get part of the code repository for updates and totally they pulled out the DLL, reverse engineered, rewrote the DLL, put it in their Trojan, put it back into the repository that they knew that was going to be published for updates, and it ran legitimately. Even had a service name that was legitimate. Even did behavior alongside the legitimate code as though it was like it was really part of the code. It was super sophisticated. I think I've listened to 2 podcasts that really broke it down pretty good. Steve Gibson on his Twit, and one more. And I'm going back and I'm listening to it. I'm not some super guru, penetration tester, but even I realized the scope and depth of the talent and the coordination. They even did it so that when they had the C2 and the callback from malicious code to exfiltrate data, they used local IP addresses in the country/state where they were, so you wouldn't get suspicious activity going to a geographical region that was not where the data should be talking. Meaning that if they were going to hack you in the UK, they made sure that the callback and the information extraction occurred to an IP address in the UK, because it would have flagged if all of a sudden you saw everything running to wherever the endpoint was.
They did a lot of things to cover up what they're doing. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. So, I don't like, behavior like that. But dude, you gotta say it's pretty good, right?
Oh, I mean,
it's pretty good, right?
They're
And this is and
well
the blowback
funded.
from this is, and you said the right word. What'd you say? Very well funded.
Right.
Oh yeah, that's it. I told you motivation, time, and money. What is my motivation? How much time do I have? And do I have money? Or will the promise of money? Right? And that's what happened. So I'm off that. I've made my thing. My job right now is that anytime a customer calls me and say, "Hey man, I think we're impacted. How can you help?" My job is to help. Can't bitch and moan. You can't blame. Whomever else was at fault will be found out eventually. Any of the customers that I'm working with, my job is not to go back and badmouth any company, whatever. That you can't do anything about it now. I'm not telling customers to yank it out because to do that would just introduce a whole new set of problems that you'd have, right? Don't be reactionary. Be very deliberate in your actions about what you're going to do and follow the experts. The experts are not in CNBC, they're not CNN, they're not Fox, they're not anybody other than trained cybersecurity individuals. You know, the news is sensationalizing it right now. That's the reason I'm not watching. I wish everyone that's affected by this, especially our listeners who have customers, that the nothing super negative comes out, but we don't know. I got a repository of data that I can move forward with now. So I did have a customer. I'm gonna say one more thing. I did say I was gonna say one more thing one more time, but I'm gonna say it one more time. So the customer said, "What could I do right now so I'm not running around scrambling, Edward? That will start putting me on the path, not only for this possible infiltration of my data and into my infrastructure." I said, zero trust framework. Everybody's an adversary until they prove themselves an ally. You got to implement zero trust. I don't care who zero trust framework you do it, do it. No one can be trusted. No one. No vendors, no employees, anything. Zero trust framework is the way to go right now to start putting you on the path. So no, it's going to help you out in the end, and it's going to give you a framework and a path and some stepping stones. So you're just not bouncing around. Well, we got to go look at this now. We got to go look at this now. What about this? What about our stewards? What about our zero trust framework is your friend, and that's going to get you in the right place.
All right, we'll move on to something that makes you happier.
Hey, Cloud App Security.
Microsoft Cloud App Security Activity Log and Azure Sentinel. So you already can get the alerts. So now they're just giving you a way to send over the actual raw data.
Yeah. So I like this. I'll admit that my understanding of this a little bit threw me off. Like, weren't we already able to do this? So if you go back into the connector, let me go into my connector, my lab on another screen real quick, because I already thought this was already available.
So what they were doing is they were able to send over the alerts. Now they're saying that be able to send over the logs. I guess that they're now saying that because I thought that they would actually enable this in the Microsoft 365 Defender connector, which right now only sends over Defender for endpoint data, but I thought that they would actually enable it there instead of sending over the raw data on the actual Microsoft Cloud App Security data connector. That's
what is that cloud discovery logs? Is that me putting in discovery where I put in the collector and that's sending over? So what's the difference between that and this checkbox that I'm looking at now? Because I'm looking at it, I have alerts coming over.
You're talking about on the connector page right here?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I think they probably only sent over alerts before, which is standard for the Microsoft security products, like Defender for Endpoint and so on, unless you're using the Microsoft 365 Defender connector, which is set up to send over the underlying data.
Because I've had that cloud discovery running for months, and I think what that is that I have a log collector. You know, for those who are listening, you can stand up in Azure. You can stand up a Linux collector in a container inside Azure, and then forward your sys log from your endpoints or your whatever inspection edge devices to it, and so that those logs are there. I thought that this connector was taking that information and doing it. So maybe I need to go back and read and say, okay.
Yeah. You know, I think the discovery logs were always out there. They're now talking about the activity log, which is different than the discovery log, and they're using the API and a playbook to actually send the data over. So maybe this will still end up in the Defender connector. But yeah, they're actually talking about the other log. But I would think that that's going to be part of the Microsoft 365 Defender connector in the future.
So I've been looking at this, and this is not exact science, but people always ask me what connectors are coming, right? I've found that when these type of connectors are driven by writing playbooks, that is a good indication that the connector is going to manifest itself. I think you're going to have some contraction and deprecation of some of these connectors and just merge them, like you said inside the Defender, and just merge them. Microsoft Defender.
So here's the cloud app security, right? So there's the discovery logs, right?
Yep.
And then let's go to Microsoft 365 Defender. And so here's the Defender for endpoint, which is fine. There's the cloud app security coming soon. So I think that this is where the activity is going to come in here and automatically be part of this connector.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of those connectors that exist are probably going to be deprecated and just merged down into this. And you have configuration.
Well, I think that this is actually sending the log data versus alerts. I don't know if they're going to get rid of the other connectors because they're specific for the alerts.
Well, just put them here and put down checkboxes. Do you want alerts? Do you want logs? Do you want discovery logs? And just have fewer connectors and just have a super connector. That way you can go to one, and that way if you see anything turn off, you know what's going on, right? So you're not going to get rid of it. You'll just take that capability and merge it down,
right,
and then give you a configuration checkbox here. I like to have them all into one connector that I can get a green, yellow, or red, there rather than have them all broken out. Maybe it looks good to have a whole bunch of connectors for marketing, right? 2021 is my year of do it, right?
So when you do all this testing, make sure you start building out your best practices for each scenario for us. So we can.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to submit a request to Microsoft to write a course and a test around licensing.
I have to say that it would be rejected because licensing is the Microsoft sales rep's job security. Why would they approve that? Am I right?
I'm not going to touch that at all. Not at all. Yep. So.
All right. Well, that's it for the articles, and I guess we'll be back in a few weeks.
Yeah. To our listeners on this last podcast, I hope there's a whole bunch of you. Submit some questions. So if you wanted more focused content, you want us to investigate something, configure something, test out something prior so you can hear, go to our page, submit a request, leave some contact information. Within reason, Frank and I will try to go out there and try to configure this up and give you some insight on what we saw, right? We always like learning new things. And quite frankly, had I not worked on that Linux question from a peer in the field, I had forgot about the alternatives commands to be able to run Python scripts inside Red Hat outside of, I forget what directory you're supposed to run them in, but the directions from the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint on how to onboard Linux doesn't really tell you what directory to download the ATP package. It just says download it to your machine on the Windows, copy it, then go to your Linux machine and copy it to there. It doesn't tell you what directory to put it in. So maybe that documentation needs to say, well, you couldn't, right? Because you'd have to now figure out which directory across all the different distros is going to allow you to run it, right?
Maybe you could write a blog post for the tech community, and then on our podcast we can discuss it.
See, no, I'm not going to commit to that. Right? I'm telling you about it right now. Wait for the movie. We'll see. Maybe I should. Well, I need to do some more writing. It's been a while since I've written any blogs, and I haven't really written a lot since I left running the partner community blog, which was actually fun writing for partners and stuff. It's like the podcast. you can't half do it. You're going to do it, you got to do it. And the best way to do it is sort of write 2 or 3 articles in advance and not be behind, right? Or either have your topics in your head so you can write these things, right? But maybe I will. I do need to do some writing to get back, and then maybe get you to be one of the contributing authors and vetters of the of the article before we go. So we'll see.
All right. Well, listen, you have a good holidays here, and enjoy the new house, and get everything done so the wife is happy.
The wife will never be happy. Yeah.
Wow, you started going down that road and stopped very
I
fast.
stopped. She listened to the podcast. I better stop. Or it would be unhappy. All right. Well, frankly, I'll be in touch over the holidays. I'll put that thing in the mail that I said I was going to send to you, and I look forward to relaxing, man. I hope you get some relaxation. I'm actually going to go get me some Chick-fil-A fries.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Until next time.
Until next time.